Hey guys, it's xBundok here, and welcome back to the cavern. Now, today's paint I am very over enthusiastic about, but I do want to open it up with a trigger warning. It is a zombie paint. It's going to involve gore and discussion about what happens to folks after they pass. So if you're not comfortable with that, feel free to go on and support one of your other favorite YouTubers or watch another video of mine. So, getting into it, I picked up this guy the other day just because I thought the fact that he's about to beat someone with his own arm is hilarious, and I love painting zombies. So I did up a base white prime on him. I didn't trust the primer right out of the box. I also wanted the colors to pop a little bit more. I wanted to be able to show all of them through the layering, which is why I didn't do any of the zenithal priming on him. We just went with the white. Now, I'm also going to include in here a shot of what the recommended paint, I guess, is for the packaging. I always look at the back, especially for ones that I don't know very well. And let me just say, this color combo ain't it. It's not working. Your bones aren't that white. If somebody goes and paints bones that white, I'm gonna sit you down and have a nice little convo. Don't know why. I mean, I know what they're going for, but that's not what he would look like. So we're going to try and do this our own way, and I'll explain why I'm doing it in the process. So we're going to go a little bit backwards with this painting procedure for this guy. We're going to start with washes. Now, I'll explain why, but I have a green-based wash and a purple-based wash. Now, the purple we're going to be using for any of the internals or any of the bits where the cuts are, and the green will be for the skin tones. After that, we're going to follow on and we're going to do our layering for the flesh. So I've got the pallid witch flesh, elf flesh, and then I also have the rosy skin. If I want to add that for highlighting, we'll go in there and add it over. Now, the reason I want to start with the washes first is I want my actual flesh tone to be a very thin coat, mostly because there's a lot of detail on this mini. So if I go in with the wash first, and then I go in and do a thin coat with the skin tone, that wash is still going to show through, but it's not going to be ridiculously deep. It's kind of like adding the shading beforehand, the same we did with the zenithal shading, but just using a different kind of medium versus the light to dark aspect, right? You're just doing your color layering. Now, when it comes to decomp, which is never a phrase I thought I would be saying on my channel, you have to remember there's so many things inside that would be decaying at different rates, different times, depending on what the cause is, what's going on, where they're from, all those kinds of things, right? So that's going to be something we take into consideration here. When I end up approaching this mini, I'm treating it as if his arm was detached before reanimation, so that's going to be a lot more advanced with the coloring and decay. So again, we're just taking those purple tones and we're putting on any of the internals, and then we're going to take the greens and put it on what would be the external, so the skin tones. Just because from my experience in the funeral industry and the embalming trade, that would kind of be the tonals I was seeing with someone. So I want this guy to be a bit more accurate than the orange and purple he was on the packaging. Now, for the washes we're applying here, I have not thinned them out at all. I would recommend, though, if you are using those Citadel washes, test them on a piece of the mini first that might not be the focus of attention. It might not be something that'll be seen after you add it to a terrain piece. Mostly because, from my experience, they're very thick, they're a heavy wash. Sometimes you need to thin them out. For my final wash over the tones, the skin tones at the end of this piece, I thinned it out, I think 1 drop of wash to maybe 4 or 5 drops of water, and it still ended up very, very green. So that's just something I would recommend to take into consideration if you're using those washes for your figure. Now, for this guy, when you're doing flesh tones, if you're looking at decay, this is a conversation we were having earlier. Okay, obviously this is not a biological zombie. I mean, if this guy was running on, you know, heart and blood pumping to be walking around, I mean, he'd run out of motor oil pretty quick if his arm and his guts are hanging out. It's just not going to work. So obviously he would have to be through magical means, which means his blood wouldn't be flowing through him. So there would still be some pallor about him along with decay. And I'm also thinking all of his blood is going to be pulling in his feet because it's just going to go to the lowest point. It's not going to be flowing through the individual. So later on, we're also going to see we have a mixture of 2 paints that I used thinned out with water, so kind of like a makeshift wash that we're going to be layering on top of the skin tones as well to kind of give that feeling of either the pooling or lividity in the tones of the skin, or just from advanced decay on extremities because your fingers and toes are going to go first. So we're going to finish up these washes and then we're going to do some skin tones and then I'll hop back in here. Now you can see when we're applying these flesh tones, we want to go in, again, really thin. Do damp brush, dip in the paint just enough, right? Obviously not an oversaturated brush, but you're going to thinly layer these on because I'm also going to do wet on wet. So I have 2 different flesh tones I have here that you're going to do kind of like a patchwork modeling effect because that's what it would look like. It wouldn't be solid one color in one section and then another color in another. It all just kind of muddles together. It's not going to be really stand out or delineated. So you'll see we're going real thin over all the flesh tones of, or I guess skin portions of this zombie, and we're just, again, thin enough so that that green tint still peeks through. And I know with my lighting here, it's a little bit hard to see. I should have taken it down a couple of steps to show the tonalities a little bit better. But you want flesh, but not stark white. You're not looking to make sure that this paint coats everything. Obviously, otherwise we wouldn't have done the washes first. So this is him with his very first base coat of those flesh tones. You can see I use the one that's a bit more tan around the open holes, just because I feel like serrated edging, you know, things would have cut there, pulled there, whenever whatever was occurring to him. Now we're going to go through and we're going to do all these little lacerations, and I don't know if they're sores or if they're supposed to be like flesh tears post-mortem. I'm not sure. But for his internals here, we're going to go with some deeper red tones. I have a lighter red just for a couple of highlights that we end up might working in there, but we'll see. And for those pieces, we are going to be using the MSP paint. I guess Master Series paints. It's like saying ATM, but I apologize. So we've got the crimson red, the garnet red, and the heraldic red, I think it was. Yep. So we're going to be using these 3 for the tones there, and then we're also going to be pulling in my gem purple and the umber brown, and that's what you're going to want to look at, because once that blood is oxidizing and or the air's hitting it, it is going to get darker. It's going to get purplish brown. Sometimes you get that green tone, but that's usually if there's fat and skin involved, but that's a whole nother thing. And so that's what I try to, I guess that's my little tidbit. If you go to the store and you're going to pick up meat and you see the stuff that's a couple days old, it's turning brown, brownish, grayish, purple. That's what you should think of when you're painting, I guess, the inside of a zombie that's hanging out. So this is how our guy's looking now. We're going to go in, we're going to do a little bit more highlighting. I'm going to put a black wash onto his arm and probably his toes, just because we want a little bit of that necrotic feel sitting in there. Probably a little bit more brown on the exposed arm stump. And a little bit of detailing, and of course we have to paint his clothes there on the bottom. Now you can see, like I said, I put a lot of that purple and brown wash on that ripped off arm because again, I want that to be more advanced decay, like where he would have been if he wasn't reanimated. That's the rot he should be at. So I mean, looking at him, he's looking okay. He's not too bad. I want to put in a couple of pictures after this. Hopefully I remember to, just so we can see where it's at now versus where it's going to go after the washes and extra things added on. And again, we're going to use more of that gem purple and that umber brown to get that extraneous wash. And now a little bit of that, and then just add a little bit of water. You see, that's what I mean when it's not, you're not doing thick paint, you're not using it as paint, you just want it so it's super viscous, super fluid, and that you just layer it, and layer it. I don't go heavy off the bat, because then to work backwards to add that skin tone and then move forwards again, it's really difficult, at least in my experience. So we're gonna go through and we're gonna do that black wash, and like I said, a couple of highlights, nothing like edge highlighting, and get his clothing done, his little loincloth, and we'll get into it. Alright, so this is where he's at after a little bit of that black washing and a bit more of the purple and brown shading around some of the wound areas. We also painted up his internal bones. Again, don't use stark white. I used the Citadel's, the Screaming Skull tone. It's a bit more of a tan. Of course, you can use like little dabs of white if you want to do an accent. That's no problem. But if you put flat white, like if you grab your bottle of solid white, it will not look decent. It'll pop way too much. It'll look like it doesn't fit in. So here we go. We got our finished boy up here in a little bit. I did one more wash of green over him, and I mean, it just sealed the deal of the zombie look. This is probably one of my favorite paints I've done in a long time. I guess if anybody needs a zombie commission, hit me up. They're a lot of fun to paint, and I think he turned out pretty well. Let me know what you guys think down in the comments. Again, as always, thank you for watching. Like, comment, and subscribe. We're over 200 subscribers now, so thank you everyone that's interested in our content. And until next time, take care.